अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स, वेलकम टू माय चैनल। आज हम EDU A516 के मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन आंसर्स स्टार्ट करने लगे हैं। फाइनल टर्म प्रिपरेशन के हवाले से वीडियो बनाई जा रही है। इसमें लेक्चर नंबर 23 से लेक्चर 45 तक के तमाम इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन आंसर्स कवर किए गए हैं। तो चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं। व्हाट इज कम्युनिकेशन? Communication is a collaborative process in which two or more people share meaning, ideas, thoughts, and feelings. It includes both spoken and unspoken forms of expression. When does communication development begin in children? Communication development begins at birth, and some evidence suggests that it may start before birth. It develops through children's interest with important people and their cultural environment. How do young children communicate before using words? Young children communicate through gestures, vocalizations, noises, facial expression, and touch before they can use words. These early forms allow them to express needs and respond to others. What factors influence children's communication development? Children's communication development is influenced by social, cultural, and individual factors. Their interest, disposition, health, well-being, family, and education environment all play important role. Why is communication important for children? Communication is essential for children's learning, well-being, and holistic development. It helps them build relationships, express feelings, and understand the world around them. What are the main aspects of communication? The main aspects of communication are speech, language, literacy, and communicative competence. These aspects are different but closely connected with one another. What is a speech? Speech is a verbal means of communication that involves producing and combining sounds into words. It requires control of the lips, tongue, teeth, palate, breathing, and voice. What is phonology? Phonology is the sound system of a language. It explains how phonemes and sound combinations are organized and used in words. What is language? Language is a socially shared system of signs, words, and symbols used for thinking and communication. It may appear in spoken, written, or signed form. What is the difference between receptive and expressive language? Receptive language is the ability to understand words, phrases, and sentences, while expressive language is the ability to use language to communicate messages to others. What are the three major components of language? The three major components of language are form, content, and use. Form concerns structure, content concerns meaning, and use concerns communication in real life situations. What is communicative competence? Communicative competence is the ability to use language and other resources effectively in social situations. It includes knowing what to say, where to say it, and how to adapt communication for different people and purposes. How does communication support cognitive development? Communication helps children understand information, think, respond, and interact with others. A strong early oral language also supports later literacy and reading comprehension. How does communication support social emotional development? Language helps children express and regulate their emotions and understand the feeling of others. It also supports friendship, cooperation, and awareness of different perspectives. How does communication develop socio-cultural understanding? Communication helps children learn the symbols, values, and patterns of their own culture and other cultures as well. It also teaches them to communicate respectfully in different social situations. What are individual factors in communication development? Individual factors include interest, natural disposition, learning preferences, health, well-being, and hearing. These factors affect a child's motivation and ability to communicate. What is a communication-rich environment? A communication-rich environment provides many ways to express meaning through speech, drawing, writing, movement, music, and pictures. It also includes responsive adults and children who support interaction and learning. This is communication-rich environment. What is the teacher's role in communication development? Teachers create supportive communication environments and provide meaningful interaction. They model, they reinforce, and extend children's speech, language, literacy, and communicative competence. What is language development? Language development is the process through which children learn to understand and communicate language. It develops rapidly from birth to about 5 years of age. Are the stages of language development the same for all children? The stages are generally universal, but children reach them at different ages and speeds. Therefore, a child should be compared with developmental norms rather than with another child. What is the first stage of language development? The first stage is the sounds or prelinguist stage. During this stage, infants cry, gurgle, coo, and learn to control the sounds they can produce. Why is the first stage important? The first stage creates the foundation of the child's first language. The child experiments with sounds. The child experiments with sounds but cannot yet turn them into proper words. What is babbling? Babbling is the second stage in which the child produces repeated consonant vowel syllables. These sounds gradually become more similar to the sounds and intonation of the child's native language. When does babbling normally end? Babbling continues throughout most of the first year after birth. It normally decreases when the child begins to produce meaningful words. What is a holophrase? A holophrase is a single word or syllable that expresses the meaning of a complete sentence. Its exact meaning depends on the situation and context. When does the holophrase stage begin? The holophrase stage usually begins between 10 and 13 months of age. At this stage, children often use nouns to communicate complete ideas. Give an example of holophrase. The word car may mean look at the car outside. When a child looks through a window, the single word car expresses a complete message in that context. This is an example of a holophrase stage. What is the two-word sentence stage? The two-word sentence stage is the fourth stage of language development. It usually appears between 18 and 20 months of age. What kind of relationships are expressed through two-word sentences? Two-word sentences can express possessor-possession, actor-action, and action-object relationships. Examples include mommy sock, cat sleeping, and drink milk. What is the child's language ability during the two-word stage? The child may have a vocabulary of about 300 words and can combine two words logically. However, the child has not yet mastered complete grammatical rule. What are telegraphic sentences? Telegraphic sentences are short sentences of 3 or more words that usually contain a noun and a verb. They omit function words and ending that add little to the main meaning. Give examples of telegraphic speech. Examples of telegraphic speech include mommy juice, baby fall down, and where daddy go. These sentences are short but still communicate a clear idea. How does telegraphic speech follow language order? Telegraphic speech generally follow the normal word order of the child's language. For example, English usually follow SVO order while Urdu commonly follows SOV order. What happens in the sixth stage of language development? In the sixth stage, children learn to join related sentences logically. They also begin to express ideas about time, space, and social expectations. How does grammar develop in the sixth stage? Children add previously missing function words, endings, and grammatical elements. They learn to use language more like the adults around them. How large is the vocabulary in the sixth stage? A child's vocabulary may expand to about 1,000 words during this stage. The child also learned the rules, forms, and norms for using these words. Why is language considered a skill? Language is considered a skill because it is developed through practice rather than by memorizing information alone. The more learner listen, speak, read, and write, the more competent they become. What are study skills? Study skills are abilities that help learners study more efficiently. They increase subject knowledge and also help students learn other subjects independently. How are linguistic skills different from study skills? Linguistic skills help learners communicate through listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Study skills help learners perceive, understand, retain, and retrieve information. What are four operations involved in study? The four operations are perception, comprehension, retention, and retrieval. A learner must select relevant information, understand it, remember it, and produce it when needed. What are the three major types of study skill? The three major types of study skills are gathering skills, storage skills, and retrieval skills. They correspond to locating information, retaining it, and using it later. What is the difference between note taking and note making? Note taking involves listening to a lecture and recording important points. Note making involves reading books or other materials and preparing organized notes. What are the short term and long term goals of a student? The short term goal of a student is usually to pass examination. The long term goal is to prepare for life and become independent learner. Why do students need formal training in study skill? Many students do not naturally learn how to locate information, make notes, or write summaries. Formal training helps them acquire these skills quickly and correctly. Why is trial and error learning of study skills ineffective? Trial and error can take a long time and may lead students to develop weak habits. Proper guidance accelerates learning and improves their study of other subjects. Are study skills needed only at higher level? Study skills are needed at every educational level. Even primary children use study skills when they identify the moral of a story or locate an answer. Why should study skills be included in the English curriculum? English is now viewed as a service language that helps students study other subjects. Therefore, English teachers can teach strategies for reading, note making, summarizing, and independent learning. What is the role of the English teacher in developing study skill? The English teacher is not expected to teach every school subject. The teacher should teach the language and strategies students need to study those subjects effectively. How can dictionary skills be developed? Learners can be asked to find a word's part of speech, inflected forms, pronunciations, and meanings. Such tasks teach them to use a dictionary as a complete reference source. How does an index help a learner? An index helps a learner locate specific information and the pages where it appears. It saves time and prevents the learner from reading an entire book unnecessarily. How can notes be organized diagrammatically? Students can arrange main and supporting ideas in a diagram or visual display. This method makes relationship between source and ideas easier to understand and remember. From which sources can students gather information? Students can gather information from teachers, books, radio, television, fellow students, and personal reflection. Each source contributes to a fuller understanding of the subject. What is summarizing? Summarizing is the major retrieval skill in which a learner presents the main idea in a clear and logical paragraph. A summary should be comprehensive, precise, and free from extra information. What approach is useful for developing a study skill? Study skills should be developed through tasks that require problem solving. Such tasks help learner practice locating, organizing, storing, and retrieving information independently. What is the status of English in Pakistan? English officially has the status of a second language in Pakistan. Culturally, however, it is often treated as a foreign language. What is language acquisition? Language acquisition is a natural and subconscious process through which children understand and use language. The learner focuses on the message rather than a grammatical rule. What conditions are needed for language acquisition? The learner needs natural communication and repeated exposure to meaningful language. Interaction with classmates and other speakers provides useful practice. What is language learning? Language learning is the conscious study of rules, vocabulary, and forms through direct instruction. Learners know that they are studying the language and can discuss its rules. What is the difference between acquisition and learning? Acquisition is implicit, natural, and age related, while learning is explicit, effort based, and not limited by age. Acquisition happens through exposure, whereas learning happens through deliberate study. Does knowledge of grammar guarantee good communication? Knowledge of grammar rule does not necessarily produce good speaking or writing. A learner may perform well on a grammar test but still struggle to communicate naturally. What is a native language? A native language is the language acquired in early childhood from the family and surrounding environment. It is also called the mother tongue, first language, or L1. Can a child have more than one native language? A child raised in a bilingual home can have more than one native language. The child naturally acquires the words and rules of both languages from daily interaction. What is a second language? A second language is learned after the native language and is used for public communication, education, trade, or administration. It is also called L2. What factors affect second language learning? Internal factors include age, aptitude, motivation, personality, cognitive style, and learning strategies. External factors include teaching context, language input, and interaction. What is the role of an English language teacher? An English language teacher develops vocabulary, speech, language, confidence, and communication skills. The teacher also controls content, learning processes, and interaction patterns according to the chosen method. What are the four major classes of teacher competencies? The four major classes are instructional delivery, classroom management, formative assessment, and personal competence. These areas help teachers improve learning and make effective classroom decisions. What is a multilingual classroom? A multilingual classroom contains students from different language and cultural backgrounds. The students may not share a common first language. Why must English be used in a multilingual classroom? English becomes the common language because students cannot depend on one shared mother tongue. This situation gives them meaningful practice in using English. How can cultural diversity benefit the classroom? Different cultural experiences provide interesting topics for discussion and comparison. Teachers can use holidays, food, customs, and daily life to introduce vocabulary and new perspective. Why do multilingual learners make different error? Students transfer different pronunciation and structural pattern from their first languages. Their varied errors encourage everyone to speak and listen more carefully. How do learning styles differ in multilingual class? Students may come from cultures with different expectations about teacher authority and classroom participation. Some may prefer lectures while others may be comfortable with discussion and group work. How can pair and group work support multilingual learner? Mixed culture, pair, and group work helps students leave their comfort zone and practice new learning style. It also encourages cooperation, communication, and understanding among students.